it's so goddamn fun to have Ultraman back on my review rotation with the debut of Ultraman Arc. This first episode was way more about building the world of Arc, while at the same time giving us small details about the cast of characters which inhabit the world. I was actually quite surprised that the episode didn't really revolve around Yuma. It was semi-evenly split between the cast, but it does feel like Yuma kind of got the most out of the episode, he and Sho, with both of them kind of being the newbies, while also Yuma is the host of our titular Ultra, with Yuma being the quote-unquote new guy in Skip. So that means you need to learn a lot about the inner working of Skip and the GDF. The episode kind of shows that he would absolutely jump into danger to save someone, which does make sense with him being the protagonist, but I'm not really sure if he understands the danger specifically when he's not transformed. Not only because literally Skip doesn't have actual like weapons, they just have a fucking stun gun. They literally, that's the only like real weapon they have. So like him using it to like try to kill the monsters is interesting, but also kind of shows like his good heart, but also his blindness, stupidity for like a quick bit. But I absolutely love his interaction with Ban. It really seems that in those 3 months that he has been a part of that specific branch of Skip, they really formed a connection, while Rin seems to be there to really teach him about the job and the inner working of working for Skip and the GDF. While it's interesting that even just with one interaction with Sho, he genuinely looks up to him, almost like, oh my god, you are so cool, I want to be like you. It's really interesting. And after Sho got hurt from the monster attack, he really wanted to make sure he was okay. And his partnership with hoping I'm saying his name correctly, but I think it's supposed to be Ryutoron or Rayotoron. I'm going to learn that name, but the light that kind of gives Yuma the power to transform into Arc is really interesting, because it is on the vague side, because we don't really know how many times they did really transform. It is kind of interesting that we're doing kind of the opposite thing from like a Gento, where like Gento was a newbie Ultra host and an experienced member of an attack team or defense team, while Yuma is an experienced Ultra, but he's a newbie to anything revolving around pretty much the inner working of a defense team and being a part of a semi of an army, which it is really interesting. And I like, if we're going to return to Yuma's interaction with his light, it is kind of interesting because it seems like Ryotoron can talk, or at least in some sort of way. It's not like a full-on conversation, let's say like Haruki and Zed in Ultraman Z, but it seems to be like Yuma can hear him. Maybe Ryotoron can maybe speak Japanese because of Yuma, but it is kind of like a semi-new take, because it seems like Ryotoron is kind of just a being of light. He's not really an Ultra, he's just a light. Like, this is kind of how I remember it to be, because not every being of light is an Ultra. So it is kind of interesting that maybe Ryotoron is just a light that transforms into Ultraman because of Yuma, which could be interesting because it's a semi-new take of the human Ultraman category, kind of like how Rube or Tiga, Dyna, Gaia, pretty much like those type of, like, I love the Heisei Ultra, to be completely honest. So it is kind of interesting. But yeah, like overall, like Yuma as a character, he is kind of like not full throwback to new gen heroes of them being happy-go-lucky, look at me, I am the good guy, but but it is a very interesting take to do with that type of hero of like, oh, he's kind of a combination of, I would say, Asubi Karata and a little bit of like Guy Kurenai, because it seems like, hey, he being an experienced Ultra but also being a newbie in a defense team, it is kind of interesting. So it's going to be kind of like, okay, how they're going to play up, you know, those interactions, specifically with him disappearing a lot, and Ban actually does say, hey, where the fuck have you been? Like, you're doing this way too often. So it is going to be kind of interesting. While Show was really interesting because for the rest of the cast, like, he got like the second most spotlight around him, with him being a part of the GDF, which kind of is same of the defense team, but it also seems like they're not. It really feels like in the grander universe, let's say if I would compare it to like a show like Tiga and slightly Dyna, like the TCP is very much the head of their organization, but we have like Guts / Super Guts. So pretty much the GDF are pretty much like the TCP, and like Super Guts and Guts are Skip, but like Skip is not really a defense team. They're just preventing. They're a preventing team. They're kind of like a team Seagull in Ultraman Gaia, but like less on the rescue side, which I'm sorry, like there's going to be in one point of video that I'm going to talk about like my dream Ultraman project, and like my dream Ultraman project, a little bit of it, like Team Seagull, but if it was like a full ass team, that would have been interesting. But Sho being a part of the GDF is cool, not only with him kind of having a weapon, like it's not a real gun, but it is a gun, so he has a gun, which is cool, but him having a weapon kind of shows kind of the different mentalities of the GDF and Skip, where Skip is like, hey, let's protect the kaijus, let's not harm them, they're also living beings, we would kill them when we need to, where it seems like the GDF would just like, hey, let's blast them, they're kaijus, who fucking cares, which it is kind of interesting. While also the GDF and Skip don't really share information, and it is very much an Ultra thing to do of like the defense team, like our main defense team and the governing organization doesn't really share information. Most of the time is the governing organization, because there are most of the time the bad guys. In the end of the day, it never was really the monster, it was always going to be like the human. The difference is, let's say if we compare to Ultraman Rising, most of the time they're like slightly more developed, and if they're like not as developed, they're just like bigoted pieces of shit, like the Boshin Blazer. So it is interesting that we are slowly just kind of like, we are putting like pins in places for specific points in the show of like, hey, they're going to be the bad guys, they're very much like hiding away information that our team needs, but who cares, we don't. So it is kind of interesting, and it was kind of interesting that it really feels like show is not going to be like other like GDF soldiers that we're going to meet, because when like Sho like ask Yuma, hey, like the fuck are you going to do when the monster attacks? Like you don't really need to do anything, you're very much like, you don't really need to like help rescue someone, it's the police and firefighters jobs. And like Yuma said, no, we should help, like that's a part of our role, we are here to prevent disasters. And like you can kind of see in his eye there is a spark, like, oh my god, I maybe found my people, which is like really cool. Again, Sho as a character seems to be kind of like this almost like a bridging gap between Skip and the GDF. He has the mindset of Skip, but he most of the time maybe would act like the GDF, which does feel like they're just guns blazing first and foremost, and pretty much ask questions later. How much they do collect parts from kaijus to, you know more about them, but they would still hide a lot of the information from the people they work with, which is, again, evil, but it's fine. I don't really care. But yeah, like I really like the coffee gag. It's like, we hit a roadblock, or we need to drink coffee because like caffeine actually would stimulate our brain and we can actually think better. We don't have coffee. And when he left, and Yuma was kind of upset when he left, it. Mainly because they didn't really got a proper goodbye, which kind of like shows a little bit more about the character of Yuma. It's like, oh, like I really wanted a proper goodbye. Like for me, this is really important. It seems like he's very much a people's person. Specifically, like you can really see when he was kind of like pretty much riding to his job after he was late because anime, Tokusatsu, I don't know, he didn't have a piece of toast in his mouth, so is it a gimmick? Is it like a trope if you don't have the fucking toast in your mouth? So yeah, like I just love when pretty much Bond came in as like, hey, because of the recent attacks, specifically with the discovery of the ooze alien parasite, the GDF assigned a special investigator to work this specific branch of Skip, which, oh, it's almost like it has to be it. Again, it is kind of like build it up to a character that we already know. It's kind of funny, but I'm semi-fine with it. But yeah, like I love that he just comes in and he's like, oh, if we're going to work together, I prepared a gift. And he like places the big fucking gift on the table and he like unwraps it and it's a coffee machine. Those people don't fucking love coffee in that building because they fucking scream their fucking lungs out. It's like, what's wrong with you? Can you tell me, son? But yeah, like I'm really interested in showing Yuma. For the rest of the cast, I did really like Rain and Bun. It really seems that in those past 3 months, like Bun almost took kind of a role of a fatherly figure over Yuma, specifically with his dad and mom being gone. Like that scene of like pretty much them discovering some sort of like a hit signature from the horn, and it's like Yuma said, hey, I need an uppie, but like that means that Ray needs to do that and not Bun. That was fun. Again, like it really seems that pretty much they picked Bun's actor because of the role. It's like you kind of played a dad to not your child. That would work. You already did it with one Toku. You would do it again. Let's go. Like that was funny. Like I genuinely enjoyed it. It's actually like really fun. While Rin, how much does feel like, oh, she's kind of teaching the ropes, specifically like socially in Skip and the GDF. She really does feel like a big sister, so it feels like there's going to be kind of like a familial interaction and kind of socialization within this branch of Skip. It seems like Show is going to be the cool uncle. It's going to be fun. While Yupei is an interesting rabbit robot. I have not a lot of things to say, to be completely honest. It is kind of interesting when the head detaches, a tongue comes out. I am very confused about that, but yeah, for like the main cast, our main cast of heroes, it is really interesting. Again, arc right now, we don't know enough about Raytheon, and it does really feel like Raytheon and kind of like one of the big of the story is going to be kind of like, okay, discovering where he came from. It's going to be the complete opposite of Blazer, when Blazer was like, the origin story doesn't really matter. Like how much, again, like they kind of told us where he came from, but we weren't really elaborated about it, which is fine. Like, we were told, which is, like I would always say, hey, you can tell me where the Ultra is from. I don't really need more, but it is going to be kind of interesting because he does speak in Japanese, or English if you're watching the dub, which is cool. While it is interesting that we are kind of getting, or at least we are getting a setup to our main villains, which it is cool because like we didn't know about V99 since, well, like if we go back to Blazer, like V99 we discovered it around what, like the mid-teens or at least early teens of Blazer. So like getting some sort of a main villain straight off the bat, it is interesting with the ooze parasite, which did pretty much kind of floated from space to Earth in around multiple locations on Earth. But it is interesting that some of them attach themselves to the monogalous horn that from the Monogamous monster that attacked on K-Day. It is interesting that they went to that horn first. So it is interesting. It could be somehow connected to the Monogamous kaiju, but yeah, like that's the one that it is kind of interesting, mainly because it's a parasite that takes control of kaijus. So it's a semi of an inverse like Cerebro from Z, where like Cerebro kind of like takes control of humans and summons the kaiju most of the time, or at least helps to summon the kaijus. Like the ooze parasites pretty much take control of a kaiju and pretty much makes it go berserk, which it is interesting. Again, could be something that leads up to Monogamous to be revived, or at least someone connected to that kaiju. Again, could be interesting because we don't know surely if Monogamous died. We just know of like the horde being detached and pretty much like being stuck there in the ground. Like the town wanted to make it a tourist trap, which it's fucking evil. But yeah, like I really like the monster for this first episode. Like I think it was like really cool looking, like monsters with like array of lights that is a part of the like design is really cool. But yeah, like overall, like I really like the bits of lore, at least for the villains. Again, it is going to be interesting how the parasite is going to involve the pretty much main bad, because it does feel like we're going to get a main bad. Again, it really depends on how it's going to go. It could be pretty much the parasite getting smarter and smarter and somehow reviving a Monogamous, or just the parasite just creating itself a new body. It is going to be interesting, specifically with most of the kaijus being new. It's really cool. We're getting some olds, but I'm fine with it. But yeah, like if we're already talking about designs, how much I love the kaiju suits. I think the ooze parasite looks fucking creepy as shit. I absolutely love Ark's rise up. Like I was like, oh, will we get a rise up in the first episode, or even at all? Like, are they going to do what Blazer done with the beam? But Ark isn't going to get a rise up. But from the thumbnail, it was kind of spoiled. Like, oh, Ark is getting a rise up. I wish they maybe would have waited with that. But like, man, I love, and it is interesting that they actually put up a counter on the screen when the fight started, which I really like. The pretty much the way they kind of gave it a reason why there is a timer when pretty much Ark rescued Show pulled up his phone and started recording Ark, which does make sense. People would say, oh, but it doesn't really make sense. Like, there are shots that he can't film. But most of the shots, most of the fight, incredibly so, was a pure one shot. There wasn't like enough cuts between it to actually like really feel like, oh, this was shot like multiple times. It really feels like very much of a flowing fight. Like, I really like everything surrounding that fight. But now if I'm thinking about it, it's like, okay, is every episode going to get the counter, like the timer on the screen, and how they're going to pretty much integrate it into the episode? Because I think this time was integrated beautifully, and I think it was like a really cool idea. But like, is everybody just going to pull up their phones and just record it, and this is how it's going to work? Like, I get it. It's not only there to show the young / new viewers like, oh, Ultraman has a time limit. After 3 minutes, his counter timer beeps, and he needs to pretty much like hurry up and finish off the monster. But also, it shows us that when Ark's color timer beeps, he can actually use not only the armor sets that we already know of, but also that's the only time that he can actually also use his sword, which does kind of like makes doesn't make him like super powerful straight off the bat, so it is kind of nerfing him. So it is going to be kind of interesting for how long that like rule is going to stay. Like, I get it, like the 3-minute rule is very much kind of like it's an Ultraman thing, it always was, but like to like a detriment to like the show is like, okay, does he going to need to wait 3 minutes to use his final form, or he would just hack into it and just like, oh, I can transform into my final form? It is kind of going to be kind of like, okay, how the show is going to integrate the setting for the counter for the free time, for the 3-minute time limit, how that's going to work. It is going to be very interesting. But yeah, like I really like the fight scene. I like that we're getting like a lot of old school finishers being back, like the shield. Like oh man, I love that he actually kind of like walks with the shield and he breaks it and he fucking stabs the monster with it. It's genuinely like a really cool looking thing, and like was actually surprised that the show actually did it. I don't know, it's fucking cool. And it is kind of interesting that it's like, oh, like Arc tells Yuma to imagine how to kind of try to beat the monster. It is kind of cool. While also the Tsujimoto shot, yeah, just don't blow it over. Like don't make it every episode, Tsujimoto, please. Like you can put your fucking Shiba Inu in every episode, but like for fuck's sake, which I was actually surprised that like he didn't put a fucking Shiba Inu in it. Like straight first episode, he waited for a bit. I was actually kind of surprised. But yeah, like overall, I absolutely love how this first episode kind of turns out. So yeah, like I really like this episode. I think it's really fun. Like I'm interested to know more about Arc and how he and Yuma kind of met. Specifically, like you could actually see like a drawing of Ultraman Arc in Yuma's like home. So it's like they have to be somehow connected, like how like Yuma and Arc are going to be a thing. It could be like his dad was an Ultra, because both Arc and Yuma's dad do share an actor, so it does make sense to make the big reveal of like, my dad was the light all along. They're doing the Dyna thing, that's fine. I don't really care, like I actually like it, but like I liked it. I thought that it gave us enough about the world that Arc kind of lives in and fighting, but also it gives us enough like really cool shots. Like the episode was shot so interesting, like a lot of like there are really cool looking shots in the episode. It feels very different. I'm interested if it's not going to be like a one-time thing. I hope it's going to be multiple times, because there are specific shots that I just found it to be really interesting. Specifically like when Sho got hurt and Arc talked to Yuma, like you see like a broken mirror and you see Arc there, and it is like a really cool looking shot. It does really work. Like I really liked it. But yeah, like as a first episode, it was a great introduction to the world. It was a great introduction to the characters. It wasn't as like, I would say, groundbreaking as Blazer's first episode, but I truly believe like it would be very fucking tough to one-up Blazer's first episode. But yeah, like overall, Ultraman Arc very first episode gets an A+ for me. So yeah, what you thought about Ultraman Arc episode number 1, comment below, let me know. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, comment below, let me know. Thank you very much. If you liked the video, please like it, and also if you didn't subscribe yet, please subscribe to my channel, because that would be nice and also would complete the dream of the subscribed button to become a subscribed button. So yeah, have a great rest of your day, and only you can prevent forest fires. Bye bye!